The 4th of July holiday can be a rough one when it comes to our pets.
Here with tips on keeping your forever friends safe over the weekend is Dr. Caroline Tanasi with the University of Illinois Veterinary Teaching Hospital. This doesn't pop into my head very often until July 3rd, July 4th, fireworks start going off, dogs start going berserk.
Right. Actually, it's starting earlier and earlier, it seems like each year. I was hearing them as last week. So
yes, same. And then you see all the Facebook posts pop up
Correct.
about pet owners complaining about
Right.
people
Yep.
stop setting off the fireworks. So we've got some tips to share with our viewers at home who may have a pet that is a little afraid of fireworks. So what are some things that we need to be mindful of?
Sure. I think the main thing is if you know that your pet's afraid, if there are medications that your pet's taken before, make sure you have them on hand. If not, to talk to your vet now, because we get into the weekend, they may or may not be open for refills, things like that. Second would be to make sure your pet has identification, whether it's a collar, a microchip is a really good idea too, because if they happen to get away because they're spooked, that there's a way to identify them. And then lastly, to keep them indoors, keep them in a room where there's minimal, to keep quiet, maybe have the TV going, have the blinds closed, things like that.
I would also imagine if you have your dogs outside with you and you're setting off some small fireworks in the backyard or whatever,
Keep them away,
keep
right?
them
Because
separate.
some dogs will be very curious and want to bite or get very close, and we don't want to have that happen. You can get trauma to the mouth or the face, the eyes, burn injuries, things like that. So we want to avoid that as well.
Well, and I've also had neighbors set off fireworks next door, and then I find the little pieces
Right.
in my yard, and it's like, that looks like something a dog may
Want to
pick up
consume.
and chew, and that would probably not be good.
Right, we want to avoid anything that should be either in the trash or not in a dog's mouth, to be away from them.
Yeah.
you've got a few other things on your list for ways to keep healthy that may not be firework related.
Yeah, a lot of times people get together for parties and socialization, which is great, but we want to make sure the pets don't have access to your booze. They can sometimes be very curious what's in your cup.
Sure.
Also, the food that you may be serving, just make sure it's not accessible to your dog, because I know I have a dog that likes to counter surf, just to make sure they don't have access to things like chocolate or fatty foods and things like that.
These are all great tips for the 4th of July. I think these are also applicable to the severe weather that we've been having over the last week or so,
Absolutely.
because with all of the thunder and the loud storms, I
Yes.
think dogs, I know my sister's dog has not been a fan.
Right.
So these are kind of some of the things you can apply as well.
Absolutely.
What kind of medicine could you prescribe your dog, I guess, without going to a vet? I've heard of like
Benadryl?
I have heard of homeowner or pet owners giving them Benadryl. Is that safe?
Yeah, Benadryl's pretty safe for dogs, but to be honest, it doesn't really have the same effects that we see in people, like the sedation. And I certainly don't want to advocate dosing your animal without consulting a veterinarian first.
That's
I
probably
figured that was probably a good
bet.
plan. We don't need to get too far into the weeds on this, but when it comes to wildlife and animals and fireworks, I would imagine there's at least some disruption for them, or are they just used to it by now?
That's a good question. I think the main thing would be the debris that's left behind that they could get they could ingest and consume. If you're in an area that's wooded, that there's birds and things that could be affected by the booms in the sky, and we certainly don't want to do it in an area that could potentially cause harm because you have animals that are nearby. So I think common sense would rule that. In that case.
Can you imagine being a bird that was born on, say, the 8th of July last year? You're minding your own business, you know, flying through the sky, and then that first firework shows up. You've got to be...
Why the 8th of July?
Because they wouldn't have experienced fireworks before that. So that's their first firework, and they're just minding their own business, and then all of a sudden, boom, that's got to throw you for a loop.
Dr. Sander there at the Wildlife Medical Clinic has a great article on the website with all the information about wildlife and fireworks, which we will have a link to. Lots of great tips also on your all's Twitter, so we appreciate you being here. Great tips for pet owners out there.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much. Coming up here in just a few minutes.
CILiving.tv.
Oh, yeah, go there, CILiving.tv. Did you know